people around the world all of the time. We discuss issues with friends, we listen to the news, we might even read the newspaper. And sometimes we get alerts, often in our email, asking us to take action in one way or another. It may feel important to take action, but sometimes we hesitate because we don't really understand the process of how bills get passed, when they go into effect, and the impact of speaking up as a citizen. Tonight, Barb Lyman, former government teacher and a member of the Wheaton League of Women Voters, will help us learn many of the things we wished we had learned in or wish we remember from our government classes back in high school. We encourage you to put questions in the chat, and we'll have time for questions at the end. Barb?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome to class. What I'm going to do really quickly here is share my screen. As you know, there's no talking to your neighbors, and detentions will be given to myself, I guess, if I can't get this to go. There we go. All right. So tonight what I'd like to do is I'm just going to give you a brief overview of how the legislature works, things that you probably already know, and maybe a few tidbits of things that you weren't aware of. So as Susan said, it's really important to know how and when to contact your legislators and how important it is for you to express your voice in our democracy. So we're going to begin with just a general overview of the Illinois General Assembly. Right now, currently, we're in the 102nd General Assembly. What you know is that in the Illinois General Assembly, let me go back one slide. I'll just give you some general information. The General Assembly operates on a 2-year cycle. It's called a biennium, okay? So actually one session is 2 years, all right? The sessions always begin on in the second Wednesday of January. So on the second Wednesday in January 23rd, we're going to begin starting the 103rd General Assembly. It will go for 2 years until after the next presidential election. Well, then we'll start again another biennium. We have 118 representatives that serve 2-year terms and are up for re-election every 2 years. We have 59 senators who serve 4-year terms, and each senator is associated with 2 representatives. All Senate seats and all representative seats are up for re-election on November 8th due to redistricting. But normally Senate seats are staggered, so only 1/2 of the Senate changes per 2-year election. At the beginning of each biennium, a House elects a Speaker of the House from the majority party. The senators will elect a president from the majority party. Just some basic facts for you. According to the Illinois Policy Institute, base salaries for representatives are around $70,000. Plus, they get $155 per day bonus in session, and they are reimbursed for mileage. There's also stipends for leadership positions, anywhere from $12,000 to $28,000 because they have extra duties. They also get $69,409 per year to run their district offices. Senators receive that same salary, but they get $83,000 to run their district offices because their districts are so much larger. They encompass 2 legislative districts. So when the Illinois General Assembly goes into session, there's 3 types of sessions that they can have. Regular session usually runs from the second Wednesday in January to May 31st. The special sessions can be called by the governor or the leaderships of both houses, but those special sessions are only allowed to talk about the topic, a specific topic, which is the reason for the special session to be called. In the fall, the General Assembly meets for 2 weeks, usually 1 week in October and 1 week in November. And the whole purpose of that is to deal with any bills that the governor may have vetoed that were passed during regular session. Now, sometimes you're going to hear about lame duck sessions, and lame duck sessions usually refer to sessions that are held after the November elections. And they're really called lame duck because there are elected representatives who have not won their election. So they're kind of just there for this last session. Sometimes legislators like to have lame duck sessions because legislators can vote more of their conscience and take more risky votes because they don't have to worry about running for re-election. They've either lost or they have retired. So what we want to do is always know what session that they're in. Regular session, that's where they deal with all passing legislation. Special session deals with a specific topic. Veto session just deals with the bills that the governor has vetoed. So the first thing they're going to do in January when they get into session is that they're going to elect their leadership. They're going to adopt operating rules for their chamber. They're going to set a yearly calendar of days the legislators will be in session, along with various deadlines for like when bills need to be passed out of committees, etc. So the regular session operates under specific rules for both the House of Representatives and for the Senate. So how a bill becomes law looks like this maze. It looks so very complicated. It's no wonder people say, I don't know how to get involved in government because I don't understand how government works. So we're going to go back to a very simple basic. Remember, bill, I'm just a bill, just an ordinary bill. And this is something that we use in the high schools too, to get students kind of engaged in what actually is taking place. So a bill starts with the idea of a legislator who becomes the sponsor of the bill. Legislators use the Illinois legislative staff to develop the wording of a bill and research what they want to do to make sure it's not in conflict with any other existing legislation or perhaps even what another legislator might want to be thinking about passing. And this is an important stage. This very first stage, when a bill is just an idea, is really the best way for you to get involved with your representatives and take an active role in our democracy. This is where you can talk to your representative or your senator by calling his office and making an appointment and seeing him face to face. Emails and phone calls are nice, but they get thousands of them. What they really want to do is meet you face to face so that you can have a conversation, that they can recognize you at the grocery store, that they know who their constituents are. So what you need to do at this stage is if you've got an idea of what you'd like to see a bill passed, made into law, you make an appointment and you go and you sit down and talk with the legislator. Now, when you're having a meeting with the legislator, there's some really basic rules that you probably should follow. Number one, you need to outline your concern. What is your concern? Why do you want this bill passed? And you have the perfect right to select possible solutions or corrections that you've looked at and you've thought about. The most important thing you can do when you're talking to a legislator at this stage or at any time when you're advocating for an issue is to tell a story. Why is this important for you to do? They really respond to stories more than facts in the long list of statistics. They want to know how this issue has impacted you and how they can take part in correcting something. It's, be sure to thank the staff. I worked for a legislator and I can't tell you how important staff is. Staff is the voice that gets to the legislator's ear the easiest. So even if you can't meet with your legislature, meet with their head staff person, because that person will take your concerns to the legislator knowing when the legislator has adequate time to sit and listen. Handwritten notes as a follow-up are always best. People still love to receive something in the mail with a postage stamp on it, on pink stationery, so it stands out from the rest of the mail that they get. So if you have other groups or other people who agree with you, take them at this point so that your legislator is truly reflecting what you'd like to see him do in Springfield. This is where you can have a huge impact. So you're going to propose a bill, or your legislator is going to propose a bill. And there's several different kinds of bill. It's interesting to know that there's probably 7,000 bills and resolutions that are introduced to the Illinois General Assembly every year. Think about that, 7,000. They meet for 5 months to consider 7,000 measures. So there can be a new bill, brand new idea. For instance, one of the new bills that was introduced a couple of years ago was permanent vote by mail. And look what happened. Many groups advocated for that. And it was new legislation that's passed that allows us now to vote by mail without needing an excuse. There's a bill called a Revisionary Bill. And the revisionary bills are just kind of like cleanup bills. They clean up the language, or they change some dates, or they modernize procedures in existing legislation. There's also something called a shell bill. Now, shell bills are probably the most confusing bills. They actually don't say anything. They may be introduced and they may change one little word. They may change an and to an or. But the purpose of the shell bill is just to have a bill introduced in case something comes up during the General Assembly that they want to deal with. They can attach it to what they call this shell bill. This shell bill will all of a sudden have substance. They'll add an amendment that'll make it substantive. The election laws this past session actually weren't introduced in January when the session observed. They were introduced on a shell bill when they found out that the pandemic was going to continue. So when they did is in March and April, they started added language to this shell bill that was still alive so that they could pass the legislation. One of the other confusing parts about bills is that there's companion bills. Sometimes it gets really confusing when you're looking for a bill and you see a bill's been introduced in the House and it's also the exact same wording has been introduced into the Senate. They're called companion bills. In case one bill doesn't get passed in the House, the issue is still alive because it's been introduced in the Senate. It's kind of like an insurance bill, okay? The sponsor of the bill is the originator of the bill. He or she will search out supporters who will hopefully become co-sponsors of the bill. So those are the basic differences amongst the kinds of bills that are going through the legislature. Now, there's a specific procedure for bills. Bills, on the road to becoming a law, a bill has to go through 3 readings on 3 different occasions in both the House and the Senate. So the first reading of the bill, it's when it's introduced, okay? It used to be that in the legislature, in the House, for instance, the clerk would read the whole bill that was being introduced. Now they just read the title. Once the bill is read aloud in the chamber of the House or in the chamber of the Senate, what happens is the clerk assigns the bill a number and assigns the bill to go to the Rules Committee. In the Senate, the same procedure. The clerk will read the bill on the floor of the Senate. The clerk of the Senate will then assign the bill a number and send it to the Assignments Committee. That's kind of like the Clearinghouse Committee. What happens then is that those bills, the bills, once they have a number, are assigned to standing committees, okay? Whoops, standing committees. And what they are is, a standing committee is a committee, a group of legislators that have been assigned to study specific issues. For instance, elections is a standing committee, education is a standing committee, transportation is a standing committee, agriculture is a standing committee. So the Rules Committee will assign any bill that's been introduced on first reading. They will assign them to the appropriate standing committee. There's about 40 standing committees in the House and about 30 standing committees in the Senate. A committee is made up of both Republicans and Democrats. Usually the chairman of the committee is the member of the majority party, but both parties have voice in these committees. In the committee, witnesses will come when the bill is assigned to the committee will decide a calendar of when bills will be heard. These bills will be heard on this day, these bills will be heard on this day, and so on. And they'll set up committee meetings so that they can hear as many bills as possible. They'll assign them a day to be heard. During the committee meeting, this is the time where witnesses come and testify. Usually lobbyists come and testify. The sponsor of the bill will come and testify in support of his bill. The people will members on the committee will speak against it. They'll say why it's not a good bill. This is a perfect time for us to have input into the process of legislation, because this is a time where you can submit witness slips to indicate your support or your lack of support for a bill. Just briefly, after bills, well, I'll come back to this slide. So how do you do a witness slip? You get these calls for action all the time. You got to file a witness slip for House Bill 1876. Do it by such and such a date. It's really very simple. And so what I'd like to do is take you through a couple steps on how you do that. And so that the next time you get one of those action alerts, or a friend tells you that a bill is going through, you can submit your witness slip to indicate how you feel about the bill. Legislators look at these witness slips before they vote on a bill, and when they're on the House floor, they look to see how many people are in support of it. When they're in committee, they look to see how many people support it, how many people are against it. So your voice truly matters at this stage of the game of a bill passing in legislation. So what do you do? Well, the website you want to write down is ilga.gov. That's the General Assembly website. The General Assembly website is stock-filled with information. And you can see here on the screen, you can, whoops, my computer is too sensitive tonight. You can see all this information. You can see the legislative reports. You can see the members of the House. You can see the schedule of the schedule is the calendar, when committees are meeting, when the General Assembly is meeting. You can read the rules of the House. You can read the rules of the Senate. You can even get transcripts of the conversations of the committee meetings. This is where you'd make your FOIA requests. Under audio video you see there, you can click on that and you can listen into committee hearings. You can listen into the General Assembly actually when they're in session, and you can hear the House discussion and how the Robert's Rules of Orders affects their proceedings. But for filing a witness slip, so you get an email that says you have to support House Bill 1630, okay? So what you need to know is you're going to look on the left-hand side inside the red circle. You're going to search for that bill by number, okay? If it's a Senate bill, then what you're going to do is you're going to put SB and the number of the bill, no spaces. If it's a House bill, you're going to put HB and the number of the bill with no spaces. You're going to put it in this little box that's circled in red and then hit go. When you get to that, when you go to the page that it says, you're going to see here's House Bill 0030 that I searched for. On this page, you're going to see every action that's been taken for this bill. You see you can click on full text. You could read the full text of the bill. You can see that there's a short description. You can see who the House sponsors are, and those are highlighted so that you can just click on it. You can see where those representatives are from. And you can see that it's been assigned to the Elementary and Secondary Education Committee. So how do you get to that bill? What you're going to do is you're going to click on witness slips, and it's going to take you to the committee website. You're going to click on the committee that's highlighted that looks like a link. and you're going to click on Create Witness Slip. Okay, got it? You're going to see a list of all the bills that are going to be heard in that committee that day. But you see that our bill is right there, House Bill 30, all right? You're going to see that it was sponsored by this legislator. You're going to see that it's in this committee. You're going to see a little paper and pencil off to the side, okay? All you have to do is click on it. And this screen is going to come up, and you're going to see that's a record of committee witness, Illinois House of Representatives for House Bill 30. You just fill in your name, your address. You don't represent anybody but yourself, so you put in self. You don't have any agency or title, so you put in self. You enter a phone number that you could be contacted by. Say a legislator wanted to contact you to learn more about your feelings about the bill. You just enter your phone number. I've entered my cell phone number in there thousands of times, and no, I've never had any spam. Also, no one's ever called me either, but it's, you don't have to worry about, oh my God, I don't know if I want to share my cell phone number. Those of us who still have a landline, you can put that in there too, and that will save you time. The rest of the form is representation. You don't represent anybody but yourself. So you put down self once again. If you're a league member, the only person who can put down Illinois League of Women Voters is the president of the Illinois League of Women Voters. Local league presidents and everyone else cannot use their affiliation with the league. It's just one of the rules. When you get down to description, you want to make sure whether you're commenting on the original bill or perhaps it's an amendment that you want to copy on. This is a drop-down menu that would give you all the choices. When you're filing a witness slip, you have three choices. You can be a proponent, an opponent, or have no position. So you probably want to choose one of these two. You're either going to support a bill or you're going to oppose it. At that point, you're not theirs, so you're not giving oral testimony. You're not submitting a written statement. All you're doing is recording your appearance only. So you click, check, record appearance only, and then hit create slip. What you're going to get is an email confirmation that you've submitted your opposition. You can go back, if you're curious, to the site where you were, and you can click on the little box on the left, and you're going to be able to keep track of how many people support the bill and how many people oppose the bill. I do want to tell you that your name will appear there. It'll say Barbara Lyman's support, or it'll say Susan Craighead oppose. So your name will appear there, but no other information appears on that. It just says Barbara Lyman's self. And that's what the legislators look at. My legislator, Karina Villa, will look at that and goes, oh my gosh, my neighbor Barbara Lyman support this. I better support it or she's going to be knocking on my door, you know? So they look for constituent names, and they'll know you because guess what? You'll have been in their office talking to them about legislation. So your name becomes very important to them because they know that you're an active participant in our democracy, okay? Now, suppose you, let me skip ahead here. Suppose you don't have the bill number. What you'd want to do is you'd want to search, oh I hear there's a bill about parks that's coming up, and I really am against it, and I can't find out the bill number. You can search for bills by keyword, okay? See the keyword box there on the left? So you would put in parks, you would hit search, and all the bills concerning parks would come up, and you could find the one that you're looking for. But I would suggest, if you're going to file a witness slip, call your legislative's office, call their local office or call their Springfield office and say, I understand that there's a bill about parks coming up. Can you give me the bill number? And they'll be able to supply you the bill number so that you can participate. Okay. So what happens in the committee? The committee will act on bills, not all bills all the time, but the bills that they act out leave the committee with either a pass as amended, because they can amend bills in committee, or a do not pass as amendment. Or they can just vote no and not vote, or just not vote on a bill, and it stays in committee and it's dead. If it doesn't get out of committee, a bill is dead. So if you feel strongly about something, you really need to push those legislators to get it out of committee so that it can travel on its way to the whole floor of the General Assembly or to the Senate. So what happens if a bill gets out of committee? It's passed out of committee. Well, then what happens is it's placed on the chamber calendar, and it's read before the full House of Representatives or the full Senate. At this time, if a senator or a representative wants to add an amendment and they weren't in the committee, this is the time that they can do it. This is a time when they can amend or change a bill. This is the only time the rest of the legislators who aren't in the committee can make any changes to a proposed bill. Okay, so it goes through second reading, no opposition. It flies through second reading, it passes. It's read. What happens now is it goes to third reading, and third reading is where the voting takes place. So this is where the votes, this is yay or nay. You're going to check the progress of your bill. You're going to keep watching your bill. And when it's listed that it's going to the floor, you're going to be calling legislators. You're going to be asking your legislator, who should you be contacting to make sure this bill passes or make sure this bill fails? This is a time that you can have another time that you can have a direct influence on what's happening. If the bill passes out of the House or passes out of the Senate, the whole process is repeated now in the other chamber. So bills that pass out of the House now go to the Senate, and the Senate assigns them to, they do a first reading, they assign them to a committee has a hearing, that if it passes out of the committee, then it goes on to second reading on the floor, where the rest of the Senate or the rest of the House can make changes, and then it's passed in that chamber or fails in that chamber. So if the bill passes both chambers, it's considered enrolled. It's signed by the leadership of both houses, and it's sent off to the governor. Now, wonder if a bill doesn't pass both chambers. Wonder if a bill passes the House, but now the Senate in the second chamber, in the second reading, adds an amendment that the House didn't approve. Well, what happens then is that the bill gets assigned to a conference committee, and that's where members of the House and members of the Senate meet together and they work out a compromise. Once they get compromise language that they think that everybody can agree with, it goes back to the House for a vote, goes back to the Senate for a vote. So a bill travels many different ways in many different times, and all within 5 months. Now you wonder, how can they handle 7,000 bills? If 7,000 bills are introduced every year, how could they possibly deal with that much legislation? Well, that's because many of those 7,000 bills never get out of Rules Committee. And if they get out of Rules Committee and assigned to committee, many of the bills never get out of committee. So the legislature is really dealing with maybe a couple hundred bills at the most that meet all the deadlines to get out of committee, that are passed by committee vote out of rules or passed by committee vote out of the committee meetings. So not everything introduced, the takeaway here is not everything introduced gets acted on the legislative floor. Okay. Now, let's go back to Mr. Bill and let's talk about the fact that he's made it through the House, first, second, and third reading. He's made it through the Senate, first, second, and third reading. Both the leadership of the House and the Senate have now signed it, and they've sent it off to the governor. If the governor agrees, it's easy peasy. He signs the bill. It's now a law. Mr. Bill's happy. He's sent off to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State assigns him a public act number. He loses his House number or Senate number, and now he becomes a public act, and he's published in the Illinois Registry of Laws. Okay. If the governor does not like it, he has several options. He can do one of four things. He can do an amendatory veto. In other words, he says, I like this, but I want to change this one little part. So he amends the legislation with an amendatory veto, returns the bill with the specific recommendations for change back to the House of Origin. And what they'll have options. In an appropriation bill, a money bill, he can do a line item veto. He can say there's no way that you're giving the city of Naperville $60,000. Okay, he can just veto that. He can wipe it out and then send the bill back. Or he can reduce the bill. He can reduce money appropriations. He can say, okay, you guys want to give Naperville $60,000. I don't. I want to give them $40,000. So he sends a note back to the House and the Senate that he wants to reduce it to $40,000. Or the last option he has, he can do a total veto. I don't like this bill altogether. I'm not passing it. In which case, the bill goes back to the Illinois General Assembly. Now, the Illinois General Assembly has many options, okay? What they can do is they can override the governor's veto. They can say, I don't agree with you, too bad. This is what we want to do. And so by a 3/5 vote, they can override the governor's veto. And that's what they do when they go to veto session in August or in October and November. They deal with the bills that the governor has vetoed. So if they override it by 3/5, it becomes law. Too bad what the governor said. Now, I wonder if the governor doesn't want to sign a bill. He doesn't want to put his name on it. He likes it, but it's controversial and he thinks it's not good for his political future, perhaps. So he doesn't want to put his name on it. Well, a law will pass even without the governor's signature if it's on his desk for 60 days. Okay? It can become law without his signature on the 61st day. Now, that doesn't mean the day it passed both houses, because it takes a while for them to do all those procedures to get it in a form to go to the governor's desk. But if it sits on the governor's desk for 60 days, it becomes law without his signature. Okay? So, any questions thus far? Do you need me to go over it again? It's a lot of information. I've got my screen share on, so I can't see the chat. Susan, are there any questions in the chat?
We have many questions.
Oh, okay.
So would you like to take a few of them now?
Yeah, maybe about this portion. We can do it now. Sure.
All right, let's run back a little bit. One of the first questions, if the governor doesn't veto any bills, is the veto session still held?
No, they actually don't go. And You know, as of right now, I do not think there'll be a veto session for October and November. I have not heard of him vetoing any bills at this point.
So you've really encouraged people to make in-person appointments. Is that, how do you do that? Is that hard to do? Do you just look online and find their phone number, or what do you do?
Yeah, just go to you can go to their district, just search under their district office, search their name, and it'll list their district offices, or go to the famous ILGA website that I showed you. And let me show you where it's at. See where it says members? I'm on ILGA.gov on the homepage, and it says members, Senate members, House members. Click on there. What you'll do is it'll be a list of legislators. Find your legislators, click on their name, and it'll list their district office, which is here at home, and their Springfield office. And believe me, just call up their district offices. They'll make an appointment with you. They will. I was a legislative aide for a couple of years while I was going through school, and we loved to have people come in the office, and we would just make appointments during office hours. Now, understand that these legislators are in Springfield from January, the second Wednesday of January, till May 31st. There's a few days here and there where they're home on weekends, and there may be an occasional Monday that they're home. But if you've got an idea for a bill, you need to be talking to them in December, if they got reelected, that is. You need to be talking to your elected representative in December about an idea of a bill. It's also a good idea just to meet with them in December anyway and say, congratulations, I'm glad you're my representative. What ideas do you have for legislation this coming session? I'd love it if you'd contact me if you think there's anything I can do to help you, just to get to know your session. And then they'll know you. And then if you do want to make a specific appointment about a specific issue, they'll be more willing to do it during the legislative session. Anybody who wants to drive down to Springfield and see your legislators in Springfield, I'm there. I'll ride shotgun, because it's a great experience to visit your legislators in their Springfield offices. They'll take you out to the House floor. You can watch the session in the gallery. It's really fascinating. It's really fascinating. Long answer to a short question.
Important, though, I think. How much weight do legislators give to witness slips? Is it just a numbers game of how many pros and how many cons?
Basically, it is. And I cannot guarantee that every legislator looks at the names of the lists of people who have submitted them. The legislators that I work with, I know they look for those names. And they want to make sure that their constituents are on board or opposed to the legislation. Is it basically a numbers game too? Oh, yeah. When we were trying to get the Civics bill passed in Illinois several years ago, and we were hearing that there was great opposition to passing another school mandate to teach a mandated civics class, what we did is we played the numbers game. Within 48 hours, we got over 700 people to submit witness slips as proponents. And the strongest opposition that we had were swayed by the vast number of proponent slips that were submitted, and they flipped their vote. They supported the legislation. So I have firsthand experience. It works. It works. It truly works.
But how do witness slips weigh in against phone calls and emails to legislators? Do they have more impact?
They have more immediate impact, because what'll happen is that the legislator is pulling it up on his computer while he's sitting in the committee hearing or on the House floor. When you call a legislative office and you leave emails or you leave phone calls, what's happening is the office staff is just ticking off yes, no, yes, no. They're not listening to any reasons. And then what happens is that their voicemail box gets full and they don't empty it. Or the email gets full and they just count them up. And they'll say, oh yeah, it looks like I got a lot, but they're not, unless you put opponent or proponent, bill opponent. If you're going to send an email, put House Bill 30 oppose in the subject line. They're not going to read an email. They're just going to tally. And so just put it in the subject line. House Bill 30 oppose, House Bill 30 propose. Opposed, proponent.
So it sounds as if it's always a good idea to do a witness slip, and that the email and the phone call is a little icing maybe on the cake.
That's like the icing on the cake.
Okay. So you talked about when bills are read. Are they read before everyone? How many people are actually there when it's read? How many legislators?
It's funny. It's they're read at the beginning of the session. And so maybe 15, 20 legislators there, maybe 30. They get a daily digest. And so they get it in writing, so they don't have to actually be there for the public reading, because they get a daily calendar that lists all the bills on first reading, all the bills on second reading, and all the bills that are up for a vote. They get a daily calendar. And when you go to this ILGA website, you can get the same daily calendar that they get. The best way legislators know about bills being introduced is legislators talking to legislators and constituents talking to legislators. There's been many times that I called legislators and say, I really want you to support this bill. I really want you. And they go, oh, I got to check on that bill. I didn't know that was coming up. So you can serve a service to let them know that a certain legislation is coming up and that you want them to watch it.
Does it matter if a bill starts in the House or the Senate?
No, it has to go both ways, no matter where.
And where do most bills start? Is it pretty 50-50?
I'd probably say 70-30, most likely.
70-30 which way?
More in the House, because they have 118 members, so they've got more members and more smaller districts that they represent, so they have a tendency to introduce more legislation. Now, and you have to understand, some legislators have like on their records, oh, I've submitted 150 bills. Well, a lot of them are bills that agencies have asked them to pass, like our Illinois Revenue Service has said, can you pass a bill that cleans up the language in state law such and such about when to collect taxes? So a lot of the bills are just cleanup bills or revisionary bills.
So someone wants to know if you know what the fastest a bill has ever made it through.
Oh boy, the fastest a bill has ever made it through is probably close to 15 days. And that is because the timing was right. I mean, and by timing was right, I mean that oh wait, I can't I gotta went through one house in 15 days. And then it probably took another 3 or 4 weeks to get through the other house. But that's because the Rules Committee got it out to Standing Committee right away, and the Standing Committee happened to meet right away. And it was just a bill that everybody agreed with, or a resolution everybody agreed with. And so third reading was right away. Yeah, it was a timing thing.
So you talked about the relatively small percentage of bills that actually get acted upon, out of that 7,000, few hundred maybe. What happens to bills that get introduced but don't get acted upon? Do they come up the following year?
Okay, so this is where you get into the House rules and the Senate rules. And those rule books are like 20 pages long. Most of the time, what you'll see, I think I have a picture of it. I hope I'm not making anybody dizzy with moving through these slides. Here, you're going to see, let's just look at this bill that I just put up on the slide right now, if everyone can see it. You're going to see that it was a bill. It's a statute to amend in order of appearance. It gives you the synopsis of what it is. You can see it went through first reading. It was filed with the clerk. It went through first reading. It was referred to the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee sent it to the Judiciary Committee. They filed some amendments in committee, and then all of a sudden, it's re-referred to the Rules Committee. What happened? It's Rule 19A in the House rules. If a bill does not pass out of committee, it gets sent back to the Rules Committee if it's the first year of the 2-year session, okay? That means the following January, when they reconvene, that bill can still be considered and get out of committee. If it's like this year, when we're in the last year of the 2-year session, the bill is going to go back to rules, but the session's going to end for good in January, so it's going to die. If that legislator wants the Illini Task Force Firearm Violence Bill to be considered again, he has to reintroduce it in January. Because this bill currently, with this number, never got out of committee and the second time never got out of rules. So it dies. It's over. It's finished.
So that's one of the questions that we have here. Someone says, I thought I read recently that if a bill doesn't pass within a 2-year assembly, it has to start all over again in the new one. So that's
right.
Yes.
With a new number. So that makes it really confusing for all of us because we liked the bill. It didn't make it. Now I got to figure out I got to find out what the new number is. It won't go by the old number. It gets a brand new number.
Are bills often vetoed?
No, not really. I can't remember in recent history when a bill was vetoed under the current administration. Under the previous administration, with a Democratic majority in both the House and the Senate, the Republican governor did veto bills. And in fact, yeah, there were quite a few.
So it just depends.
You know, it was a basic political difference as to what the future should look like.
And that's our last question for right now.
Okay. So let me see where I'm at. So what I wanted to talk to you about is just this ILGA government gov, and what a great site it is for information, for the calendar, to know when your legislators are in session, to know if you want to make an appointment, you look at the calendar to find out if they're going to be home on a certain day that you would like to, and see if you can get an appointment when they're home. You know, you can, like I said, you can, through the audio video links, you can watch hearings. It's a great way to raise your blood pressure, to watch the hearings and see what's happening. Okay. You can set up an account on ilga.gov. You can set up an account that will help you file witness slips. It will help you keep track. If you sign into your account, it'll keep track of all the witness slips. It'll help you keep track of all the bills that you want to watch during the legislative session. And on this sheet on ILGA, you can see the bills that are in the conference committee. Remember, I talked to you about a bill that's passed in the House and a bill that's passed in the Senate. They don't match up, so they have to go to a conference committee so they can agree on it. You can see what bills are there. You can see all the list of the whole bills that are introduced. There's tons of information on this website, so much that you could waste days on it and still have tons of questions. So how do you know about bills? Like I've been saying, develop a relationship with your elected officials. You can also watch special interest group websites. I follow the Illinois Association of School Boards. I'm a former teacher. I want to know what school boards are asking legislation for, so that I can watch for the legislation they're going to impact, and I can oppose or support it. If you're a Sierra Club, go on the Sierra Club website. They also will have legislation that they're pushing. You can go talk to your city council. They hire lobbyists. They have a legislative agenda. Ask your city council, what's their legislative agenda for the upcoming session? The county board hires lobbyists and has a legislative specialist. You can go to your county board. There's tons of special interest groups that you can just tack into their website, and you can find out what their legislative agendas are, so you can find out what's happening or what they're pushing for. You can also become an issue specialist for the league, and you'll be given an expertise where you'll be given access to talk to people who are experts in that field to follow the legislation. Now, we only dealt with the Illinois General Assembly. Basically, Congress is the same thing, okay? They do the same process. Bill goes through the House, has to go through the Senate, it has to pass both houses and go on to the president for his veto or his signature. It's interesting, the president does not have a line item veto. He cannot do that. He cannot do the things that our governor of Illinois can do. He's far more limited. The United States Constitution gives Congress the right to develop their own rules for functioning. And of course, the one rule that we all know about is Rule 22, which has resulted in the filibuster, okay? The filibuster, the most famous filibuster we all know, is from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I wish I could see you all to raise hands to say how many people have seen Mr. Smith Go to Washington. Filibusters don't work that way anymore. What they've instituted is, there still is a filibuster, but it's now called a silent filibuster. Filibusters are an obstacle many feel to passing legislation, because one of the way the Senate, this is only in the Senate now, the United States Senate, the way the Senate operates is that you have to hold, when a bill is introduced and it's ready for voting, you have to have discussion. Then you have a vote to close discussion, and then you can have a vote to take action on the bill. What Rule 22 says in the Senate is that you need 60 votes to close discussion. So filibusters can continue forever if they never have 60 votes to stop the discussion so they can go to a vote. In the 70s, it became impossible for the Senate to get any action done because of the filibuster. So what they did is they divided their Senate on the agenda. So bills can be filibustered, but it's silently. No one has to stand up and talk like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. They're just put on the side table, and then they can carry on with other business. The only way for the Senate to get rid of the filibuster is to all agree, all agree to lower the threshold, make it 50, make it 51. But they can't have a discussion on that because they need 60 votes. They can never vote on that because they need 60 votes to end the discussion, okay? There's also parliamentary games that they can play that are so confusing that I don't know that I could explain it to you clearly. But basically, it's a parliamentary game of disagreeing with the chair, and that motion passes with just a majority. And once they've done that, then they can change the rule. It's like a 4-step process. So can they get rid of the filibuster? Yes, they just have to have the political will to want to be able to change the rule. So I just wanted to let you know that's the one exception from Illinois to Congress, is that we don't have the filibuster rules. So, okay, there's Civics 101. Are you guys ready for your test? Oh, you didn't know you were gonna have to pass a test? Oh, I'm sorry. No, I don't have a test. You're fine.
All right, if you want to stop sharing your screen, Barb.
Oh, sure. There we go.
So the one last question we had was how to set up an account on the website. But I did put something in the chat where you can just go to my legislation, and it gives you an opportunity to put in your name and create a password.
And I have recorded a video that's on LWVIL on how to set up your account. So there's like a 6-minute video that I recorded that's posted on the state website on how to do that very thing with slides, and I walk you through each step.
Do we have any other questions that people would like to ask now?
Okay, you're all AP students. I guess you got it.
I just have to say this was amazing. I think I'm going to need to watch this about 3 more times, and then I'll feel like I have some grasp of the situation. So thank you. This was amazing, Barb.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And believe me, I gave you in 55 minutes what we spend at least a month on in the high school classroom. So you've all done very well to absorb what you have.
So if we keep watching it, that we shouldn't feel bad, that we've got a lot of material.
And feel free to reach out. Susan can send my email if you have any other questions or want to do any other readings. I have some great readings about the history of the filibuster or American government made simple or anything like that, that if you'd like some recommendations, I'd be glad to share.
So thank you, Barb, very much for this instruction. I also will say this is the most questions I think we've had in months and months and months, which speaks well of the presentation. So I want to tell everyone tonight, if you enjoyed this event and appreciate the community and civic work of the League of Women Voters of Naperville or of Wheaton, please consider joining the League. You can go to the join page of our website, lwvnaperville.org, and I'm sure that the Wheaton League also has a join button. Also, please watch for upcoming information on candidate forums. We are entering an election season, and there'll be lots of candidate forums, mostly in October, well before the election. Also, please join us next month, Wednesday, October 12th, when our Ideas Forum will focus on the nuts and bolts and everything you need to know about the November 8th election. One more opportunity for a Zoom on Tuesday, October 25th. The League of Women Voters is co-sponsoring a program about book banning and censorship in public and school libraries. We're co-sponsoring with AAUW Naperville area, us, NCJW Chicago North Shore, and Illinois Now. They have an amazing lineup of experts. I think it's just going to be fascinating. You can find the link on the AAUW site. It will be up on our website shortly, and I believe it is on all of our Facebook pages. So I hope you give that serious consideration. Once again, thank you everyone for coming tonight.
Be active, get involved.
And vote.
Vote, yes. Good night.